Hi there, this is session 18 of programming from the very basics using Python. This is part 3 of the session related to string, working with strings basically. So I think in session 16, I introduced you to string formats. I talked about how do you create strings using various little notations and basic string operations that you can perform. There's a continuation on the next session, which is session 17, where I introduced you to a couple of string methods. Mostly, I talked about how you can validate string contents by using the is alpha, is alnum, and is digit, and other variations. And I also told you about a couple of other methods to convert to uppercase, convert to lowercase, and also how do you search for a string, a substring in a string rather, uh, starting from the beginning or at the end, right? So with the starts with, ends with, and using the in operator. So in this session, which is a continuum, there's part 3 of the series, we will learn about some more string methods. First of all, when I talk about searching for a string, there are some use case scenarios, practical use case scenarios, which I'm going to talk about. Let's assume that there is a string here. And the string is just very basic set of words which I put in. Now, within this string, I want to check whether the string starts with the word this. Now we can see that this is not fully lowercase. You can see that I deliberately made it uppercase. Sometimes you want to do a search in a case insensitive manner. So if I try doing it with a dot starts with of the word this like this, it would work. But try with a lowercase, as you can see that it doesn't work, right? Now, if at all I want to do a case insensitive search, the way I could apply that would be a dot. One option is I could convert the entire string to lowercase. Let's assume that the substring I'm looking for is, let me just put it as this. I'll just say s is equal to the word this. I can use a dot lower dot starts with and s. And this works fine. I converted the entire string to lowercase. And then I'm trying to check whether it starts with a substring. But this might not be performance efficient, especially when dealing with strings which are very large. So we're looking at a string that's got about thousands of characters or thousands of letters. I would say maybe as I told you, right, you can take a entire book in a string, right, entire text document in a string, and you want to search for it, and you want to say starts with a word. This will not be very efficient. The way you can make it more efficient is you could actually look up the length of the substring. The substring is already known. It's the word this. So I rather than converting the entire string to lowercase, I can actually use a slice operation like this: a of colon len of substring, and then rather than starts with, I can just say, this extracts only the excerpt of it. I can just say dot lower equals s. I need to close this. What really? It's highlighting something wrong here. Let's see. Oh, okay. Double equal to. I forgot that, right? Yeah, double equal to. So you can see that I can simply use comparison here. I don't even have to use starts with in this case because it's obvious that I'm just extracting a slice of a string right in the beginning, exactly for the length of the substring I want to match, and I'd use equality operator. If you want to find out what kind of performance improvement I would get, let me just try with a small string. This string is actually not very big, right? It's just few words. So if you want to try out with this string in here, let's try it. I'll just provide. Okay, I'll just use another cell here. First, I'll try the first operation, which involves a dot lower dot starts with s. You're going to find out how much time it takes. As I told you, if you're using IPython from Anaconda, so you can actually use time it magic to identify how much time it takes, provides a statistical average on the overall time taken for this expression to be evaluated. It's going to run this a couple of times, maybe hundreds or thousands of times, maybe. It shows roughly around 139 nanoseconds plus or minus 4 nanoseconds per loop. That's the average time it takes, right, on my machine. But if I want to try this one out, this particular expression, let me just copy this again and just prefix with time it here. And let's find out how much time this takes. So the difference is, rather than converting an entire string to lowercase, I'm only extracting a slice of a string, converting a small slice of a string to lowercase and comparing. You don't see much of a big difference, but you can see that 139 nanoseconds versus 127, not that big, isn't it? But if at all the string is large, how do you make a large string? One quick way to do that is, this A is a small string, right? I can use A into 5. Will make it much larger. It just repeats the same string 5 times, but it's still fine because I'm going to do a search in the beginning on a very large string. So instead of 5, I'm going to make it 100. I don't want to print it. If you try to print it, it'll just flood my screen. But let's see if it does. Yeah, I think it's a very big string now, right? So rather than trying to say A into 100, I'll say A into equal to 100. It's like telling A equals A repeated 100 times. So a new string is created which is 100 times larger than the existing string, and that's reassigned to A, right? So I'll run this code first, and then I will just repeat these two cells. I'm just going to select these cells. Again, I'm holding the shift key, clicking on both these cells. Let's say I'll just say C to copy and come back below, and then V to paste it. So you can paste multiple cells by selecting with holding the shift key, pressing on the cells while it's in command mode. You can use C to copy and then paste the chunks of this multiple cells back by using V for pasting. So I did the same thing here. This time, the string is large. It's 100 times bigger. Now let's try to find out with the first one. You can see that from 390 nanoseconds, roughly around, it went to 3.86 microsecond. You can see that it's almost like 100 times jump in slowness, I would say. The performance dropped by 100%, right? 100 times, I would say. So you can see earlier it was 139 nanoseconds. It actually got much slower. It became 3.86 microseconds now. But let's try with this one. It's taking more time to complete. It's very likely that it takes lesser time performance, so it's running more iterations. You can see it's still 119 nanoseconds. So you can see that there could be performance benefits when you use the right expressions for certain operations in Python, right? So which you can see here. So anyways, I talked about the starts with, but if you want to search for a string anywhere, substring anywhere within a string using in operator, and you want to do it in a case insensitive manner, I think you should use string.caseFold instead. That does not give you great performance improvement. It is slow. It has to convert the entire string to lowercase and then compare. In a way, it's so much similar to that. So you could use that technique if you want to. Next, I should not talk about some more methods. So I talked about starts with, ends with, and in and not in operators to search for substrings in a string, the beginning, in the end, and so on. I also talked about strip methods, if you remember. I forgot to mention an interesting thing with strip. So if at all I have a string that looks like this, sometimes your strings might not start or end with space characters, but it might have some other border characters, I would say, which could be hyphens in this case. You can always use a.strip. Strip without any arguments will strip out white spaces surrounding the string, but at the beginning, at the end. If you want to only remove from the beginning, you can use lstrip. At the end, you can use rstrip. It's all the same. But if the characters that you're looking for, that you're trying to strip out, are not space characters, is something else, then you can actually mention those characters here, like this. So this is useful in scenarios where you might sometimes have some kind of headers with, I've seen a couple of headers that look like, not like this, but sometimes like this. I've seen some places headers shown up like this when I'm trying to get some headers, right, in some textual documents and so on. In such case, you can strip them out by using colon like this. Just do the trick. And yes, it only strips out from the ends, it does not remove any colons which are part of the string. So if you have colons that are actually represented as a part of strings in here, that is retained. This colon is still retained inside. It's going to remove it only if it starts and ends with this character, right? Some of you might ask me, is there a way to remove a complete pattern? Like I want to remove all special characters, right? There's no way to do that with the strip method. But there is a variant of it with regular expression module where you can apply pattern-based removal, right, of these misclaimed characters that you're not interested in. But then this is the basic strip method that's available within the string object. Now, the next set of methods I want to talk about are got to do with split and join, a most widely used method. So if you ask me which methods are most commonly used when you're dealing with strings, when you're doing text processing, split and join is found all over the place. So what does split do? What does join do? I'm going to explain that. So let's say I have a string that looks like this. Let's say maybe I'll first take a simple string this way. You could have a lot of spaces, and you could also have some new lines and mixture of new line, carriage return, tab, and all the stuff. Maybe I'll put some couple of tab characters in here, some carriage return, new line. All these are broadly known as white spaces. White spaces, because they don't show up on your screen as any special character. They just add spaces or new lines, right? Even tab stops actually add more spaces on your screen, right? That's why these are broadly categorized as white spaces. If you have a string with variable white space delimiter, I'm using the term here, right? A string with, there's a string, an example of a string with variable white space delimiter. Delimiters are like separators. That means you have some words separated by spaces. But the space is not just one space, not exactly one space. You can have one space, two space, three space, more than that. It's variable. Variable. And it's not just space. You could have space, tab, new line, carriage return combination. That's why I said variable white space delimiters. So when you have something like this, you can directly say a.split without any arguments. And what you'll get in return is a list. Nicely organized list here. It's a list of words, and you can see there, right? You can see that this is one element of a list, is another element, is another element, test and string. So it basically splits a string based on variable length, white space, delimiters by default. That's what split does, right? So you can see that splits a string based on variable length, white space, delimiters. You can also call delimiters as separators. It's all just jargon and terms. It's all the same, right? So when you run this, it returns a list, which is like a list of all the tokens. Each token is like the part that you chunked it out, right? And each chunk or token is a word here. So you get a list of words. So if you want to find out, let's say, how many words are there in a sentence, you know how to do that now. Suppose we just have a sentence here. Let's take a sentence as s is equal to, maybe I can just say, in the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. I guess you know what this is. One of the Zen idioms of Python, right? Zen of Python, remember? I think I talked about that Easter egg in my earlier video. Just don't import this in your Python prompt and you get all these passage. So you want to find out how many words are there in the string, you can actually do this. If you want to find out how many characters are there, you can say len of s. Then this will return number of characters in a string, right? This prints number of characters in a string. But you want to find out how many words are there? Assuming that each word is separated by white spaces, you can just use print len of s.split. There are 10 words in the string because the split method returns a list I'm finding out how many items are there in a list. So how many words are there in a list. So if you want to visualize it, what split does here, you can say it's not split. You can see that it's a list of words, right? You count it, it's like you'll have 10 words here. Interesting practical use case. Sometimes you want to find out how many lines are there in a string. Let's take the entire passage. Maybe what I'll do is okay, I'll type it off here, no problem. If I just type import this the first time in your Python shell or Python REPL, you get this. Let's copy this whole thing into a string. I just copy manually and let's create a string. How do you create a multi-line string? I guess you know. Triple quotes. I'm going to use 3 single quotes this time. Paste the whole thing inside. This whole data is a string completely. Now, if you want to find out how many characters are there in the string, here, S represents string. Instead of calling it S, I'll just say Zen. These are all the Zen idioms, right? So Zen is equal to, I just created a multi-line string in here. So I want to find out how many words are there, how many characters are there, how many lines are there. Basic statistics about any textual data. So if you want to find that out, you can actually do this. You can actually try print number of characters equals, I could just type len of Zen. Now I didn't run this cell. I didn't run the previous cell, by the way. That's why it throws an error. Only when you execute the cell, the variable called Zen gets defined. Otherwise, you get this name error. I forgot to run the previous cell. So I'll run the previous cell now and try this out. The number of characters in the Zen of Python passage is 858 characters. You want to find out how many words are there? How do you find out? Number of words. Len of Zen dot split. Split without any arguments will split based on white spaces. That includes even new lines. There are new lines in the string. That's how you get multiple lines. So it's going to split based on that. There are only 144 words. I should also tell you that even this hyphens are considered as words in here. Okay, that's the limitation with this, right? If you don't want to consider them as words, you need to use some kind of regular expression based pattern based split. Split is also available in the RE module, the regular expression module, where you can split based on a pattern rather than just any arbitrary tokenized non-space data, right? So you can also find out how many lines are there. How do you find out how many lines are there? There's another method called split lines, which is just a convenient way to find out number of lines in a string. Number of lines equals len of Zen dot split lines. Number of characters, number of words, number of lines, all too easy, right? If you want to find a number of characters, just find out the length of a string. If you want to find out how many words are there in a string, assuming the words can be any non-space characters, sequence of non-space characters surrounded by spaces, you can use split. If you want to find out how many lines are there, you can use the convenient method called split lines. I will show you what split lines does. It also returns a list. This is Zen, which is a string. The whole thing is a string. It shows in quotes. If I try Zen.split, it splits this entire string, multi-line string, into list of words. Yeah, it's a large number of words in places like VS Code. If the list is too long, it will put a triple dot here to indicate that there are way too many elements, and it gives you an information here. Output is truncated. You can see the scrollable element or open in a text editor. You want to see the whole thing? You can click on this. You can scroll over and you can scroll through this entire output cell and see it. Right? It's large. But instead of using split, if I try Zen.split lines, you can see the outcome. Each line is added as one item, including one blank line. There's a blank line after Zen of Python that's treated as one item in a list. It's an empty string. It becomes a list of strings representing each line. So let's say you want to write some kind of looping construct. You can also use iteration over here. For example, if at all I try for C in Zen, print C, you know what's going to happen? It's going to print every single character. It's going to iterate over every single character. Let me add end is equal to space for now. It iterates over every single character, separates by spaces. You can see that because print will add a space after printing instead of new line at this moment. So we see it. But maybe you want to iterate over every words in a string. You can try for, I'll just copy this. I can say for every word in zen.split. And then I can print that word. You can see that I choose the variable name appropriately. I use C for character, but maybe you can call char or letter. You can use some kind of meaningful variable name if you want to. I chose C there, but here I'm using, I could set W, but I put word here. So it looks more readable. Well, it iterates over every word, but if I remove this end is equal to empty space, then you can see that it iterates over every single word of the string. If you want to iterate over every single line, you could do that by using split lines rather. Maybe I want to just print with line numbers. I want to iterate with line numbers. How do you do that? I want to say line number 1, line number 2, line number 3, line number 4, and every line after that. Any idea? Well, if you learned some time ago when I talked about iteration helpers in the session, I introduced you to enumerate. So you can use enumerate in this case. I can just use for, I'll not say word here, it's a line now, right? To make this semantic change. Calling it word looks very misleading because you're printing lines. So I can actually use something called line num, comma line in enumerate of zen.split lines. And then I can print the line number followed by the line. We don't want line numbers to start from 0. What is 0th line? It doesn't make sense. We all have known line numbers to start from 1. So if you want your enumerator to start counting from 1, not from 0, you know what to do. Pass the first argument, which is the collection on which you want to enumerate, followed by the start. Line number 1 is blank. Line number 2 has got this header. Line number 3 is blank, and you can see that all of the lines, you're iterating over it. And yes, this formatting, you know what to do. If you get this kind of formatting where you want to nicely format it, you can justify them. This time you can use your format little string. It's more convenient to use F strings. I'm going to use open F string and use curly braces. And I use line number. I want to format it to, let's say, 3 characters. Pad it with 3 characters. Followed by, I can put a hyphen here. And then I can use line also in curly braces and close it. All of these tricks we are using based on our learning in all the previous sessions, if you remember, right? String literal notation, I told you about F strings. Now this looks nicely formatted. Numbers are by default right justified, which is what we are accustomed to read them as, and it looks nicely formatted. Now, sometimes you want to say, no, I want leading zeros in here. What do you do now? If you want to have leading zeros, should I put a 0.3 here? Let's see. Yeah. Or it puts with 3 digits. So if you want only padding with 2 digits, as you know that it doesn't exceed more than 3-digit numbers. The line numbers are less than 100. So you can actually use 0.2 in this case. You get it nicely formatted. As you can see here, by using all these concepts we learned from different parts, right? We can apply them and do things the way we wanted, right? So this is something we should know about split and split lines. By the way, split also takes a lot of arguments. I'll show you another use case. Oftentimes, when you're parsing data, this data may not come with space separation. Maybe you're reading a record and the entire record comes to you as a string. Let's consider this. I'll say maybe D is equal to, maybe I'll try John, comma, let's say 50, comma and I could just say Delaware. This is some kind of data which is there, which is comma separated. We also call them as CSV, comma separated values. If you heard about CSV files, a very common form that's used in spreadsheets, right? So it's a record from there. So if you want to split this, you could actually do this way. You can directly type name comma, and I can say maybe age comma place equals. You could just use d dot split, but split this time, the separator must be comma, not spaces, because you can see there's comma separation. You can now pass an argument comma. Try to print name, age, and place. Maybe you want to make it more intuitive. Maybe you can use f string in here. And as I told you, you can use f string with name equals, age equals, and place equals. And yes, this works on Python 3.7 and above. If you use slightly older version of Python, this syntax might not work as expected. There to say name is equal to open curly brace name, place is equal to open curly brace place, and so on. This is how you see it, right? So you can see that you can actually, if you know that a string has got just 3 values in it, separated by some commas, you can actually split it and you can extract them this way, right? You can do tuple unpacking. It's like similar to tuple unpacking. What is returned is a list. You unpack the list into 3 different variables. This works very well. If you know for sure that when you split it, you get 3 items in a list, right? If there are lesser or more, then there's a problem. If there's more, you can always get a slicing operation, get only the first 3 elements, but you lose out some more data. That's the drawback. But if you're not sure about the number of items, then you can just get it in a list and print it if you want to. So split can be passed with an optional parameter, which is the separator. The default separator for split are variable length white space delimiters. But if you pass separator, it works as that, but it will now work as a fixed length separator. What it means is this. Suppose if I try it out with another string where I just use double commas here, 2 commas. You know what this means? The second field is empty. That's what it indicates. In CSV document, that's how you represent it. And this works just fine. You can see that. Age is empty here. But you should also note that age is not a number. Age is not a number here. Age is a string. If you want to convert it to a number, you have to do it manually. Split returns a string. A list of strings. Okay. It doesn't know that, oh, this data is a number. Let's convert a number. It doesn't do that. So you have to do next level of processing where you have to convert age to a number by using the int constructor if you want to, right? That is something that you should know. So I told you how to use split method, and you can pass an argument here. And when you pass an argument, that will work as a fixed length delimiter. So I'll show you another example. Let us say I have a data which is like, say, this lots of spaces is a test string. But print a dot split with no arguments this time, you get it like this. But if you try to print a dot split with a space explicitly passed as an argument, you can see what you get. The reason is because there are multiple spaces here. For every space that it encounters, it assumes there's an empty field, right? It shows like empty fields here. It shows up like empty strings. I think there are 4 spaces. So it shows like for one space is a separate for this, another space is a separator for an empty string, another space an empty string, another space empty string, and then there's this. That's how you see it. So if you should note that when you pass arguments to split, it works more explicitly. It works as a fixed length delimiter. But without an argument, it uses it as a variable length white space delimiter. One more thing you should also note is that if I have a string in here with a /t is a tab character, the split without any arguments will consider that as a separator, but a split with arguments as space will only consider space as a delimiter, not tabs or new lines or carriage return. So tab is retained as it is. You can see this here. These are some subtleties that you should know if you're dealing with passing an argument to split or not passing them. Another, sometimes you might want to split a string where you don't want to, let's say, split the entire string. Maybe you have a string that's quite long. Let's take one of these lines from Zenedium. Let me take this one. One that I always recite about the Zenediums. And now when I call a.split, you can see that it splits the entire string based on the white space delimited this time. When you call split with a keyword argument, which is where you say max split is equal to, let's say, 3. You see what you get here? Max split must be passed as keyword argument. You cannot just say 3. Right? It will not work when you just pass a number 3. Right? If you say a.split of max split is equal to an argument, let's say number, right? 3. It splits up to the first 3 parts of the string. You can see that in the face. After that, the rest of the part is retained as is. So if you want to split only the first few items of a string based on a delimiter, you can use the max split argument here. So these are some of these features that split method has. So not many of them would be aware of this. So I'm just trying to tell you. By the way, you can always discover these things if you get to know how to use help. If you're using something like VS Code, a.split open parentheses will give you the syntax grammar here. It shows sep. What is a default separator? I mean, the sep is a string, default is none, max split supported indices are, it says by default is -1. Sep separator to be used to split a string. When set to none, that's a default value, will split on any white space character which is /n/r/t/f. Even /f is a font feed. Doesn't have much of an effect when you use it on your notebook, used for legacy reasons. We'll discard all of these sequences. If you pass a max split, max and order splits to perform starting from the left. -1, the default means no limit. That's the default. I'll give a default value for it. So otherwise you can specify how much you want to split. So these are some features that you should know about the split method. There's a method called join, which does the exact reverse of split. That's also a string method, but it works a little weird, and there's a little bit of unlearning that you might need to do if you come from programming languages like Perl and Ruby and a couple of other languages, Groovy and so on. Mostly join is found in arrays, array.join in the other languages, right? But here, join is a string method. It's more cleanly designed. But if you're new to it, it looks very obvious. But if you're being accustomed to how it is done in Perl, then a little bit of rewiring in your thought process is required to know how join works. But I'll show you how it is. It's pretty straightforward. If at all I have a list of words like this, let's just put some names. Jane, Mary, Alice, Tom. It's a list of strings here. I want to merge all of these strings together as a single string. Right now it's a list. What is a data type? Is a list. If I say maybe u is equal to, and if I print u, it's a list, right? You want to merge all the ingredients of a list, which are strings, list of strings, into a single string. It's like you want to concatenate everything. You want to concatenate John, Mary, Alice, Tom. The way you do that is you could say s is equal to, you could use, maybe you can use a glue character. What should be the glue string? Glue string dot join. I leave it as empty right now. Glue string dot join of u. We now try to look up s. All of them are like fully concatenated. But maybe you can try this. You can try maybe, s1 is equal to comma dot join of u. And then try to print s1. You get this. It does the opposite of split, right? So in split, you pass the argument, which is a separator. For join, what was supposed to be the separator is now called as a glue. It's going to glue all of these components with that string, right? Glue string dot join of iterable of strings, right? The syntax is You're going to read it as glue string. What do you want to glue it with? Right? Dot join of iterable of strings. I use the word iterable because it may not be a list. It can be a tuple of strings. It can be a set of strings. It can be any other iterable object that just returns string when it just gives you string when you iterate over them. It works for all forms as such. If at all the string, if at all the collection or the iterable has any object that is not a string, it's going to fail, right? Because you cannot really concatenate a string with a number. There are two different types. Try doing hello as a string plus 10, which is not a string. You'll throw an error, right? We have seen that in the earlier sessions when I told you that Python is strongly typed. So the same rules are applicable for join. So if you want to join all the ingredients of a collection or any other iterable, you got to make sure that all the ingredients are of string type. Only then they work. Otherwise, they'll fail with a type error. So this is something we should know about split and join methods. Hope I cover this. The next I should not talk about are something more interesting. We learned how to check whether a substring is there in a string, didn't we? Yes, we did. So let me just take this example of, let's take this one. This string. Now, when I check existence of the word the or the whatever, right? So look for this in a string. It's there. This returns true or false. I know it's there, but where? Where does it exist? Or how many times it is repeating? You want to find that out. First, I'll tell you how do you find out the number of occurrence of a substring in a string. You want to know how many occurrence of substring exists in a string? You can use a dot count of substring. The count method, oh, this does not occur. I type this, right? This is not there in the string. But look for the word the. It occurs twice. You can see it's there here, it's there here. Okay, this string is super simplistic. Let's take the entire Zen. You know, the Zen, I hope this variable I created earlier should still be there. It's still surviving. I want to look for the word the in this one. I can just say Zen dot count of the substring. The occurs 5 times. Remember, it's case sensitive. If you want to do a case insensitive kind of checks, you have to convert the entire string to lowercase or case fold and check it. Maybe you can do a Zen dot case fold dot count of the. Oh, case fold is a method. See, I made a mistake here. You know what I did here? Case fold is a method, not a data attribute. So you have to invoke that method. First, you have to invoke it, which will return a new string, which is case folded. On that, I need to search it. So I use case fold, open close parenthesis. See, you get this error sometimes. Attribute error. Built-in function or method object has an attribute count. When you get a pattern like this, built-in function or method object has no attribute, maybe you forgot to invoke it with a parenthesis. So you have to call it with a parenthesis, and on the return value of it, I can still call count again with parenthesis. It's called method chain loading. I'm invoking one method which returns a string, and on that string again invoke another method. So zen.caseFold returns a new string, which is case folded. On that string, I'm trying to check for existence of the, how many times it occurs? 7 times. The case sensitive manner, it was 5. But there are some of these the that starts as the beginning of a sentence with the capital T, right? So it's counting even that. So this is how we can find out number of times a substring occurs in a string. Remember, there's not just searching for a word, it searches for substring. For example, if I try to, let's say, Zen dot count of is returns 10. But look at the Zen, I'll just print it back. Wow. The word is available as a separate word over here. The substring, right? It counts all of these. 1, 2, 3. But there could be some places where is part of a substring. Do I see anywhere here? Where? Yeah, again. Although that way may not be obvious at first. No, even here it's not there. I was looking for a word this. Oh, the word this is not here, is it? It's not. Okay, bad. I'll take a simpler string here. I can show it to you. So let's take an example where I use a string which is very simplistic. I'll just say this is a test string with is, and is repeated this many times. I know this particular sentence doesn't make any grammatical sense, but it doesn't matter. Okay, it's just a string with a lot of words in here, thrown in here. So just don't try to make any semantic grammar check on that actual string, please. So you could just use s dot count of the word is. It gives me an answer as 6. You know what it does? It includes even this. Is part of it, right? This is 1. Okay, I think the highlight is always going to highlight the word. VS Code. Okay. So is part of it, part of this sentence, right? Part of this word. So it counts this 1, 2, then there is 3, 4, 5, and there's 6 one. 6 one. You can see even this is here, right? So 6. That is inclusive of all of them. Like it just searches for a substring. You can't say I want to search for a word alone. It's a pattern. You have to use regular expression for that. Use something called word boundaries in regex. But if you're doing a very simple search and find out how many times it occurs, then this will do, right? Finds the number of occurrence of a substring in a string. It can be even a character rather than a full-blown substring. I want to check how many times how many times the character T occurs in a string. This can be used, right? That's what count does. I know this substring occurs this many number of times, but I want to know where did they occur. One way to find out is by using index method. I can try s dot index of the word. Let's say use test this time. Test occurs at the 10th index, but this time there's the only occurrence, right? Let's say maybe put test a couple of times in here. Repeated this test many times. So we look for the number of occurrence of test. I'm just rewriting the old cell. 4 times. Test is occurring 1, 2, 3, 4 times. But if we try to use s.index of test, it's going to just return the index of first occurrence of a substring. Only the first occurrence. But if I want to find the second occurrence, third occurrence, well, there's a trick to do that. But before I go to that, I should tell you what happens when you look for a substring that's not found. Suppose we give, let's say, temp or say text. Instead of test, I'm looking for a word called text, which is not there in the string. So if you try to look for a substring that's not found, this will raise an exception value error. I guess even count does that. If you try to do a count of text, it will not return a value error, it will return 0. Count return 0. Says text 0 times. But index method raises a value error if a given substring is not found in a given string. So you need to handle this exception using what we call as try except block. I didn't cover that as yet. In the future further sessions, I'll talk about exception handling. You can figure out how to handle that, right? There's a dedicated 1 hour session for that. Anyways, for now, this raises an exception and you cannot handle that with an if-else condition. You need to use try except block specifically. More lines of code is required. So as a convenience, there's also another method called find. The find method is just like the index method. Just that if a substring is found, it returns the number of occurrence of the substring. But if substring is not found, like in this case, when you try text, what do you think would the return value be? It will not raise an error, but it will return a special value called -1. You should note, it does not return 0. it returns -1. You might wonder, should it not return 0 like Boolean false, right? That'd be nice. But sadly, 0 is a valid index in a string. Look for this. And I'll just print S here. And then look for the word text. It returns -1. But if I look for the word test, it shows 10, no doubt. If we look for the word this, what do you think is the answer? This is found here, right? In the string, you can see this. But where does it come? Right at the start. So what is the index of it? 0. This starts as 0th index. So 0 is a valid index. So you cannot return 0 to indicate it's not found, because 0 is a valid index if at all the substring starts at the beginning of the string. Right? The string starts with the substring. This is what you get when you use find method. So find uses a special value called -1, because when you use positive indices, all of them are valid. All of them could be valid. 0 to all the positive indices. So -1 is used to indicate that a substring is not found. I'm going to leave both of them in here. Just keep this reference in this notebook tray. So it's s.find of test. This is a valid use case. Let's say text is not found, but we say test. Returns 10. Apart from this difference where find returns -1 if a substring is not found, where index method raises a value error, there's no other difference. Everything else works just alike. Okay. So you might ask me why they have index method when find is there. Well, index method, you'll understand after a while, maybe when I cover other sessions. Count and index method. Count method, index method. Both of these are common methods found on not just a string, but all sequence collections. Every sequence has count and index method. If you go and check it up in a tuple has just only two methods, count and index. List also has count and index. When you encounter other sequence like byte array, bytes object, all of them, they have count and index methods. A sequence has some common features. All sequence collections have some common features like concatenation, repetition, and the index operator or subscript operator rather, where you can get a item at an index, slicing operations, and the access of the iterability and reverse iterability. So all these are common traits of a sequence, and they also support count and index. Now, that's why the string to be compatible with other sequences, they also have index as a part of it. And they all work, they have behaved the same. They'll raise value error. If you search for an item, that's not found. So to maintain that compatibility with other sequences, to make it look like other sequences, you'll see index method is retained. But the find method is string specific, where it returns -1 to indicate a substring is not found. And what else can be supported? Well, the find and index method, both of them, find and index method. You can also pass an optional second argument, which indicates where you want to start searching from. See, for now, when I print yes.find of test, you can see what it does. It returns a value 10. And what is 10? There's a first occurrence, index of first occurrence. What do you want to find out? The index of next occurrence. This is what you need to do. You need to skip till here. You want to start searching from this location onwards, right? You want to skip the entire string where the search is found. So 10th occurrence it's found, 10 plus length of the substring. Length of the substring is 4. So 10 plus 4 is 14. You want to start searching from the 14th index. Let me show you what that 14th index looks like. So we try to print s of 14 colon. You want to start searching from here, right? From this location. It starts from space, string, and all these, right? So if you want to start searching from a specific index onwards, you can actually use yes.find of substring, and where you want to start searching from. Start from 14th index. If you don't pass a second parameter, it starts searching from the beginning. It assumes default start is 0. Start searching from the 0th index. But you say start from the 14th index, it starts searching from this part of the string onwards, and then it returns a number. Just see the number that it returns. 30. What is 30? 30 is the index of this test. This test occurs starting from 30th index. And then you want to say, I want to find the next occurrence. What do? You skip that. You want to start searching from this index onwards, this location of the string onwards, this highlighted part, right? I want to start from that location. How do you know that location? 30 plus length of the substring. Length of test is 4. Test is 4 characters, TEST, right? So 34. You start searching from 34th index. Now it returns 42. What is 42? Looks like this occurrence is 42. Now 42 plus 4 is 46. Let's try this again. $64. Looks like this one. I guess there's no more occurrence of test. We can validate that. You try 64 plus 4 is 68. Start searching from 68 index. And finally, to say there's no more occurrence of test, it returns -1. So now we got the answer. We know that test occurs at 10th index, 30th index, 42nd index, 64th index. We did this manually, isn't it? Here is an exercise for you. I want you to try it out. And if you're able to solve this exercise on your own, don't use ChatGPT. I keep telling you that. Don't use any of these AI tools and ask them to solve it for you. You're not learning. If you want to learn, you want to try it out. Apply your logical thinking now. It's a good plan. See, when you look at redundant code like this, it looks redundant, right? Which I'm doing manually. I figured out it's found at the 10th index. Now I want to skip 10th index to that length of the substring. Start from 14th index. Find out the next occurrence. Now skip that. So I'm doing this manually. So this is a true use case for automation. You want to automate this. You want to automate this stuff, right? What do you need here? You need to repeatedly do a search. You need a loop. Find out what loop you need and implement the logic. How do you do this? So here's an exercise for you. The exercise that I want you to try out is, I'm going to create this dummy function, okay? Let's call this find all. This is not built into Python, unfortunately, so we had to write a function. Find all will take 2 arguments, a main string and a substring. You can also call this as the haystack and the needle. Some places you see needle in a haystack. They use that kind of terms, but I'm just calling it as main string and substring. This is a function. This function is supposed to take 2 arguments. I'm going to put a pass here to indicate it's a do nothing statement. It's an empty body, but I'm going to put to do here to indicate implement your logic. You need to fill this, replace a pass with your logic, whatever logic you do, such that when I call it like this, when I say find all of, maybe I'll take the string in here. I'll just keep that copy so it looks more consistent. Let me just drop off some of these things which I don't need, like is I don't need. So I want to make the string a little shorter because I just want to find this, right? So now from this particular string, if I say find all of s comma this, what it means is if I can call this function passing 2 arguments. One argument is s, which is this string. That'll be passed on as an argument called main string. So within find all, main string as a variable will represent the actual full string that I passed. And the second argument is this, that is passed as substring. I'm passing 2 arguments which are available as 2 variables inside find all. I want you to find out, I want you to print, let's say. Later on we can optimize it and return a list or implement a generator. We'll talk about that later. For now, you can just print the occurrence of, I could print the index of each occurrence of a substring in a main string. So I'm going to put this over here. Exercise for you. Implement the logic in the function find all that must return the index of each occurrence of substring in main string. This will be your exercise that I want you to try out. Try all these things out. If you need, go back to my previous sessions and explore and experiment with all those features I covered, right? If you're taking a slow path to learning, sometimes there's nothing wrong in going back and relearning if you've forgotten something. That's how you reinforce your thought process and reinforce your knowledge. Okay. Don't put time as a deadline. Don't do that. So I'm not expecting the answer tomorrow or the after. No. Take your time. Take your time. Put some thought process. Try to solve it on your own, step by step. You might fail a couple of times. Don't give up. Try it out. Okay. Learn how to use loops. If you've forgotten loops, try how to implement this. When you do this, you're reinforcing your thought process and rewiring your brain to formulate the syntax the right way. That's how you learn, right? And once you're done, once you're able to solve it, yes, you solved it. Then you need to check whether you got it right. Is there a way to optimize the code? Is there a way to refactor that? You can try looking at as a critique and see, how do I make this code simpler? Is there a way to optimize it even better? Can I make it even shorter and more elegant? So these are things that you should keep in your mind and see. But we don't know how far you would have got it right. In such a case, you want to just maybe post it on comments, or maybe you can send it over to me by email and ask me for my suggestions. And I can give you an expert advice. All right. So I'm not an expert, but yeah, there's no such thing called expertise. It's a learning. Learning is an ongoing process, perpetually ongoing process. That's what I believe, right? So though I classify myself as an expert in certain aspects, that expert is a very subjective thought. I think I'm an expert, but I may not be an expert compared to somebody else. But I will give you my suggestions. I will still give you my suggestions and tell you whether you're able to do it optimally. Who knows? You could have found out a more optimal way than I know it. So then I learn from you. That's how it is. So whatever learning I have, I would say a lot of learning that I've done in Python and most of the languages is not just about self-learning. You learn when you teach to others too. And that's why I'm doing this, right? So sometimes some of you bright people might come out with a more elegant way than what I would have thought about. Let me see that, right? All right then. So we will end this session with all the string operations today in this particular part. We'll revisit some more features on a string in a much later stage when I talk about regular expressions. That'll be done at a much later stage. The next session, I think I would be starting off with tuples and lists, and then you will see some lot of acrobatics that I'll show you with list. List gives you power in Python, and after which we'll talk about dictionaries. We'll learn about every single method and operations you can perform on dictionary. Dictionaries are one data structure that's very extensively used in Python. Apart from strings and lists, you need to know these three data structures, how to manage them very well. I'll cover them all in the next sessions as such. More exercises to follow after that. Right. So I hope you like this video. If you do really like what I'm doing right now, all these concepts I'm covering, if you're able to explore it, try it on your own, learn new things, and if you found this useful, do encourage me by hitting the like button. The more likes I see, I get more encouragement. It's like an adrenaline for me. So yeah, hit on the like button, and if you're not subscribed to my channel, do subscribe so you'll get more videos like this as I keep posting them when I had time, right? So this week I'm totally free, so I'm making more videos in a day. So I hope I will continue doing it. When I see more and more subscribers coming in, more and more people liking, will give me more jolt to do more videos. So hope to meet you in the next one. Thank you very much.